Bereshit, Genesis, chapter 37. And Yaakov dwelt in the land wherein his father was a stranger, in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Yaakov. Yosef, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brethren, and the lad was with the sons of Bilhah, and the sons of Zilpah, his father's women. And Yosef brought unto his father their evil report. Now Yashrael loved Yosef more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. And when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him, and could not speak peaceably unto him. And Yosef dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. And he said unto them,
Hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamt. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose, and stood upright, and behold, your sheaves stood round about, and made obeisance to my sheaf.
And his brethren said unto him,
Shall you indeed reign over us, or shall you indeed have dominion over us?
And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words. And he dreamed yet another dream, and told it his brethren, and said,
Behold, I have dreamed a dream more. And behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me.
And he told it to his father and to his brethren. And his father rebuked him, and said unto him,
What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brethren indeed come to bow down ourselves to you, to the earth?
And his brethren envied him. But his father observed the saying. And his brethren went to feed their father's flock in Shechem. And Yashrael said unto Yosef,
Do not your brethren feed the flock in Shechem? Come, and I will send you unto them.
And he said to him,
Here am I.
And he said to him,
Go, I pray you, and see whether it be well with your brethren, and well with the flocks, and bring me word again.
So he sent him out to the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. And a certain man found him, and behold, he was wandering in the field. And the man asked him, saying,
What do you seek?
And he said,
I seek my brethren. Tell me, I pray you, where they feed their flocks.
And the man said,
They are departed hence, for I heard them say, Let us go to Dothan.
And Yosef went after his brethren, and found them in Dothan. And when they saw him afar off, even before he came near unto them, they conspired against him to slay him. And they said one to another,
Behold, this dreamer comes. Come now, therefore, and let us slay him, and cast him into some pit, and we will say, Some evil beast has devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams.
And Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands, and said,
Let us not kill him.
And Reuben said unto them,
Shed no blood, but cast him into this pit that is in the wilderness, and lay no hand upon him,
that he might rid him out of their hands, to deliver him to his father again. And it came to pass, when Yosef was come unto his brethren, that they stripped Yosef out of his coat of many colors that was on him. And they took him, cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty. There was no water in it, and they sat down to eat bread. And they lifted up their eyes and looked, and behold, a company of Ishmaelim came from Gilead, with their camels bearing spicery and balm and myrrh, going to carry it down to Mitzrayim. And Yahudah said unto his brethren,
What profit is it if we slay our brother, and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelim, and let not our hands be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh.
And his brethren were content. Then there passed by Midianim merchantmen, and they drew and lifted up Yosef out of the pit, and sold Yosef to the Ishmaelim for 20 pieces of silver. And they brought Yosef into Mitzrayim. And Reuben returned into the pit, and behold, Yosef was not in the pit. And he rent his clothes. And he returned to his brethren and said,
The child is not, and I, whither shall I go?
And they took Yosef's coat, and killed a kid of the goats, and dipped the coat in the blood. And they sent the coat of many colors. And they brought it to their father, and said,
This we have found. Know whether it be your son's coat or no.
And he knew it, and said,
It is my son's coat. An evil beast has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt rent in pieces.
And Jacob rent his clothes, and put sackcloth upon his loins, and mourned for his son many days. And all his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. And he said,
For I will go down into Sheol unto my son, mourning.
Thus his father wept for him. And the Midianim sold him into Mitzrayim unto Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh's and a captain of the guard. Bereshit, Genesis chapter 38. And it came to pass at that time that Yehudah went down from his brethren and turned into a certain Adullamite, whose name was Chira. And Yehudah saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite, whose name was Shuach, and he took her and went in unto her. And she conceived and bore a son, and he called his name And she conceived again and bore a son, and called his name Onan. And she yet again conceived and bore a son, and called his name Shelach. And he was at Keziv when she bore him. And Yehudah took a woman for his firstborn, whose name was Tamar. And Yehudah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of Yahuwah, and Yahuwah slew him. And Yehudah said unto Onan,
Go into your brother's woman, and marry her, and raise up seed to your brother.
And Onan knew that the seed should not be his, and it came to pass, when he went in unto his brother's woman, that he spilled it on the ground, lest that he should give seed to his brother. And the thing which he did displeased Yahuwah, wherefore he slew him also. Then said Yehudah to Tamar his daughter-in-law,
Remain a widow at your father's house, till Shelach my son be grown,
for he said,
lest perchance he die also, as his brethren did.
And Tamar went and dwelt in her father's house. And in process of time, the daughter of Shuach, Yehudah's woman, died. And Yehudah was comforted, and went up unto his sheep shearers to Timnathah, and his friend Chira, the Adullamite. And it was told Tamar, saying,
Behold, your father-in-law goes up to Timnah to shear his sheep.
And she put her widow's garments off from her, and covered her with a veil, and wrapped herself, and sat in an open place, which is by the way to Timnah, for she saw that Shelach was grown, and she was not given unto him to be his woman. When Yehudah saw her, he thought her to be a harlot, because she had covered her face. And he turned unto her by the way, and said,
Go to, I pray you, let me come in unto you.
For he knew not that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said,
What will you give me, that you may come in unto me?
And he said,
I will send you a kid from the flock.
And she said,
Will you give me a pledge till you send it?
And he said,
What pledge shall I give you?
And she said,
Your signet, your bracelets, and your staff that is in your hand.
And he gave it her, and came in unto her, and she conceived by him. And she arose and went away, and laid by her veil from her, and put on the garments of her widowhood. And Yehudah sent the kid by the hand of his friend the Adullamite to receive his pledge from the woman's hand, but he found her not. Then he asked the men of that place, saying,
Where is the harlot that was openly by the wayside?
And they said,
There was no harlot in this place.
And he returned to Yehudah and said,
I cannot find her. And also the men of that place said that there was no harlot in this place.
And Yehudah said,
Let her take it to her, lest we be shamed. Behold, I sent this kid, and you have not found her.
And it came to pass, about 3 months after, that it was told Yehudah, saying,
Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has played the harlot, and also, behold, she is with child by whoredom.
And Yehudah said,
Bring her forth, and let her be burnt.
When she was brought forth, she sent to her father-in-law, saying,
By the man whose these are, am I with child.
And she said,
Discern, I pray you, whose are these, the signet, and bracelets, and staff?
And Yehudah acknowledged them. And he said,
She is more righteous than I, because that I gave her not to Shelach my son.
And he knew her again no more. And it came to pass in the time of her travail that, behold, twins were in her womb. And it came to pass when she travailed that the one put out his hand, and the midwife took and bound upon his hand a scarlet thread, saying,
This came out first.
And it came to pass, as he drew back his hand, that, behold, his brother came out. And she said,
How have you broken forth? This breach be upon you.
Therefore his name was called Peretz. And afterward came out his brother, that had the scarlet thread upon his hand, and his name was called Zerach. Bereshit, Genesis chapter 39. And Yosef was brought down to Mitzrayim, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, a Mitzrayim, bought him of the hands of the Ishmaelim, which had brought him down thither. And Yahuwah was with Yosef, and he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master, the Mitzrayim. And his master saw that Yahuwah was with him, and that Yahuwah made all that he did to prosper in his hand. And Yosef found grace in his sight, and he served him, and he made him overseer of his house, and all that he had he put into his hand. And it came to pass, from the time that he had made him overseer in his house, and over all that he had, that Yahweh blessed the Mitzrite's house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of Yahweh was upon all that he had in the house and in the field. And he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he knew not aught he had, save the bread which he did eat. And Joseph was a goodly person and well favored. And it came to pass after these things, that his master's woman cast her eyes upon Joseph. And she said,
Lie with me.
but he refused, and said unto his master's woman,
Behold, my master knows not what is with me in the house, and he has committed all that he has to my hand. There is none greater in this house than I, neither has he kept back anything from me but you, because you are his woman. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against Elohim?
And it came to pass, as she spoke to Joseph day by day, that he hearkened not unto her, to lie by her, or to be with her. And it came to pass about this time that Joseph went into the house to do his business, and there was none of the men of the house there within. And she caught him by his garment, saying,
Lie with me.
And he left his garment in her hand, and fled, and got him out. And it came to pass, when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand, and was fled forth, that she called unto the men of her house, and spoke unto them, saying,
See, he has brought in an Ephraim unto us to mock us. He came in unto me to lie with me, and I cried with a loud voice. And it came to pass, when he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me, and fled, and got him out.
And she laid up his garment by her, until his master came home. And she spoke unto him according to these words, saying,
The Ephraim servant which you have brought unto us came in unto me to mock me. And it came to pass, as I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled out.
And it came to pass, when his master heard the words of his woman, which she spoke unto him, saying,
After this did your servant to me.
that his wrath was kindled. And Joseph's master took him, and put him into the prison, a place where the king's prisoners were bound. And he was there in prison. But Yahweh was with Joseph, and showed him mercy, and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison. And whatsoever they did there, he was the doer of it. The keeper of the prison looked not to anything that was under his hand, because Yahweh was with him. And that which he did, Yahweh made it to prosper. Bereshit, Genesis chapter 40. And it came to pass after these things, that the butler of the king of Mitzrayim and his baker had offended their master, the king of Mitzrayim. And Pharaoh was wroth against his two officers, against the chief of the butlers, and against the chief of the bakers. And he put them in ward in the house of the captain of the guard, into the prison, the place where Joseph was bound. And the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he served them, and they continued a season in ward. And they dreamed a dream, both of them, each man his dream in one night, each man according to the interpretations of his dream, the butler and the baker of the king of Mitzrayim, which were bound in the prison. And Joseph came in unto them in the morning, and looked upon them, and behold, they were sad. And he asked Pharaoh's officers that were with him in the ward of his master's house, saying,
Wherefore look ye so sadly today?
And they said unto him,
We have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter of it.
And Joseph said unto them,
Do not interpretations belong to Elohim? Tell me them, I pray you.
And the chief butler told his dream to Joseph, and said to him,
In my dream, behold, a vine was before me, and in the vine were 3 branches, and it was as though it budded. And her blossoms shot forth, and the clusters thereof brought forth ripe grapes. And Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand.
And Joseph said unto him,
This is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. Yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up your head and restore you unto your place, and you shall deliver Pharaoh's cup into his hand, after the former manner when you were his butler. But think on me when it shall be well with you, and show kindness, I pray you, unto me, and make mention of me unto Pharaoh, and bring me out of this house. For indeed I was stolen out of the land of the Ephraim, and here also have I done nothing that they should put me into the dungeon.
When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was good, he said unto Joseph,
I was also in my dream, and behold, I had 3 white baskets on my head, And in the uppermost basket there was of all manner of baked meats for Pharaoh, and the birds did eat them out of the basket upon my head.
And Joseph answered and said,
This is the interpretation thereof. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up your head from off you, and shall hang you on a tree, and the birds shall eat your flesh from off you.
And it came to pass on the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast unto all his servants, and he lifted up the head of the chief butler and of the chief baker among his servants. And he restored the chief butler unto his butlership again, and he gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker, as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet did not the chief butler remember Joseph, but forgot him.
All right, welcome friends, and thank you for joining us this evening. I'm greatly honored to be joined by my co-host and good friend and researcher and author of all things truthful and esoteric, Rob Skiba. Rob, are you there, brother?
I am here, Zen. How are you?
Excellent. Excellent. Just, of course, busy with all that we do, and excited as a family. Eliana made an entrance into this world, and my children are joyful parents and excited about the prospects of new journey.
Yeah,
so
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you, brother. And we thank all of you that have also sent forward and shared the different accolades and the kindness. We love all of you, and we'll continue to do the work of the kingdom. We just are growing steadily and looking forward to that which the future will hold. So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to moving forward with the things that we are covering in the different parallel accounts and research. There's so much awesome information. Is there anything else that you wanted to bring forth as far as an update or anything else going on with what you've got happening with Seed and the progression of it?
Yeah, thanks. Well, not a whole lot that I can publicly report yet, but as you know, you were on the call Wednesday. We had a interesting brainstorm session that I think went very well. I hope you got a chance to listen to the rest of it afterwards. But things are moving forward in that regard to hopefully really launch a lot of, not just my project, but a lot of projects, if we're able to, in fact, do that. But other than that, I don't have a whole lot new stuff going on. It's just I've been tired. Yes,
I hear you, brother.
I think it's all just kind of caught up to me lately. It's like I woke up. I go to bed, pretty late normally, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning most times. So I typically wake up at 11 or 12, and I woke up at 11 and went to the bathroom. I was like, yeah, I'm going back to sleep. So I just went back to sleep. I woke up at like 2, kicked around the house, didn't do much today, and then took a nap again and like from 6 to 7:30. So I don't know what the deal is, but I'm just like, maybe it's all just caught up to me. I'm finally
catching up,
relaxing.
Yeah, I kind of feel that way, and a little bit under the weather here. Some of the girls also feeling the strain, stress, anxiety of I don't know, something definitely hitting them and weighing on them, and the kids as well. Joy was able to go through 5 hours of intense labor, and but fortunately it was all stayed at home, and they were able to get through it without having without having be forced to go to the hospital and deal with any doctors or nurses. And so
wow.
they were excited for all of that. Yeah.
So how does it feel to be a grandpa?
So exciting, brother. It's the most incredible thing. I'm thoroughly excited and joyfully overwhelmed, and looking forward to doing whatever I can in helping and assisting and watching her grow and helping with all of that. And I know they are as well. So it's going to be exciting times.
Yeah, it was weird, when I went to see my family in Florida there a couple weeks ago, and my sister, of course, she had a child back in '94, I think, and then my niece Alexa just had her first baby, and so I'm looking at my sister and I'm like, wow, like grandpa, great grandpa, all this, kind of stuff these days. I'm thinking, man. My parents and just because I'm still 18 in my head, you know what I mean? So
right.
It's like, how are all these people having grandchildren? I'm like, wait a minute, you're 51 years old yourself,
Right.
It's like, wow.
Generations, man.
Yeah, seeing generations manifesting. Of course, these days, man, it's so scary to think about what the future generations are going to have to deal with, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately. And if people don't have a good grasp on what they are truly contending with, as far as the vaccine situation and all of these checkups and health and wellness checks and all that they're trying to push upon the parents and kids.
I know.
That come in for, the boosters here and boosters there. But I'm just so grateful, at least, that my children are aware and are knowledgeable on all of that, and that they are making their own decisions. And I'm so grateful for that.
What are the regulations, in your state as far as that goes? Are they pretty strict on all the immunization stuff they want babies to have these days?
Well, of course, they want you to be up on all your boosters, and they try to force parents into buying into the whole immunization records and all that in order to be able to go to school or to receive daycare. But they don't tell you that there are exemptions, religious and political, medical exemptions, and that if you know your rights, that you can opt out on things and not have people really hassle you about it. And so I think that once my children, it'll be educating the health practitioners that they're gonna come across. But yeah, I think they're gonna avoid all of that, and they're not gonna be forced into doing anything, and they plan on homeschooling Eliana.
Good for them.
As well. And so there's nothing that will be forced upon them in a mandate.
Oh, you there? Can you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you cut out. You said mandate, and then you disappeared.
Oh no. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you good now.
Okay, good. Yeah, mandate, the buzzword, huh?
Yeah. There's I'm glad to hear they're going to be homeschooling, because man.
Yeah.
I did Flattoberfest there a few years ago, and in that presentation I was talking about the Rockefeller Foundation and just how education, the public education system was specifically created to dumb us down.
Right.
Right. And indoctrinate us and everything else, of course.
Yes, brainwash us.
There's a video, but there's a YouTube channel called Academy of Ideas, And it's a really good video they put out. It's about 10 minutes long. It's called Why Public Schools and the Mainstream Media Dumb Us Down. Really, really good video on that. So
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah. So I was looking at where we left off, and we left off in Genesis 38 in the King James. I read that. So it looks like we start off with the Targum version, and I guess you've got some other stuff to talk about with the Rod of Wonder and all kinds of stuff related to what Jacob and Tamar.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I will pull that up after I do the Targum. So 38, I'll read that in the Targum, and then I'll pull up the specific information about, because I'll definitely want to read some of that. But
yeah.
All right. Targum chapter 38. Oh, let me see too. Shares. It was at that time that Yehuda had gone down from his property and separated himself from his brethren, and had inclined to a man, an Abdullamite, whose name was Hira, that Yehuda saw there the daughter of a merchantman whose name was Shuva, and he proselytized her and entered with her. And she conceived and bare a son, and called his name because he was to die without a child. And she conceived again, and bare a son, and called his name Onan, because his father would have to mourn for him. And she added, and bare a son, and called his name Shelah, because her husband had forgotten her, and was in cessation when she bare him Jerusalem. And it was that she ceased. And Yehuda took a wife for his firstborn, a daughter of Shem the Great, whose name was Tamar. But the firstborn of Yehuda, was evil before the Lord, because he had not given his seed unto his wife. And the anger of the Lord prevailed against him. And the Lord slew him. And Yehuda said unto Onan, enter thou to thy brother's wife, and marry her, and that they would not call the children after his name. And it was, when he entered to the wife of his brother, that he corrupted his work upon the earth, that he might not raise up children to his brother's name. And what he did was evil before the Lord, and he cut off his days also. And Yehuda said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, remain a widow in thy father's house, till Shelah my son be grown up. For he said, lest he also die. As his brethren, Tamar went and remained in her father's house. And days multiplied, and the daughter of Shuba, Yehuda's wife, had died, and Yehuda was comforted. And Yehuda went up to the shearing of his flock, he and Hira his friend, the Adullamite, to Timnath. And it was told to Tamar, saying, behold, thy father-in-law cometh up to Timnath to shear his flock. And she put the dress of her widowhood from her, and covered herself with a veil, and wrapped herself, and sat in the dividing of the road where all eyes see, upon the way of Timnath. For she knew that Shelah was grown up, yet she had not been given to him to be his wife. And Yehuda saw her, but she seemed in his face as an harlot, because she had provoked him to anger in his house. And Yehuda did not love her, Jerusalem, for she had enwrapped her face And he inclined to her in the way and said, Let me now go in with thee. For he knew not that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, What wilt thou give me to go in with me? And he said, I will send thee a kid of the goats from the flocks. And she said, If thou wilt give me a pledge until thou shalt have sent. And he said, What pledge shall I give thee? And she answered, Thy seal, thy mantle, and thy staff, which is in thy hand. And he gave them to her, and went in with her, and she conceived by him. And she arose and went, and put her veil from her, and put on the dress of her widowhood. And Yehuda sent the kid of the goats by the hand of his friend, the Adulamite, to bring back the pledge from the hand of the woman. But he found her not, and asked the men of the place, saying, Where is the harlot, who was in the sight of the eyes by the way? And they said, There is no harlot here. And he returned to Yehuda, and said, I could not find her. And the men of the place also said that no harlot was there. And Yehuda said, Lest she should have taken the pledge, lest we become a laughingstock. Behold, I have sent this goat, and thou canst not find her. And it was at the time of the 3 months that she was known to be with child. And it was told to Yehuda, saying, Tamar, thy daughter-in-law, hath committed fornication, and behold, she is with child by fornication. And Yehuda said, Is she not the daughter of a priest? Let her be brought forth and burned. Tamar was brought forth to be burned, and she searched for the 3 pledges, but found them not. Uplifting her eyes to the heavens above, she thus said, Mercy I implore from thee, O Lord. Answer thou me in this hour of need, and enlighten mine eyes to find the 3 witnesses, and I will dedicate unto thee from my loins 3 saints, who shall sanctify thy name, and descend to the furnace of fire in the plain of Dura. In that hour the Holy One, blessed be he, signed to Michael, who enlightened her eyes, that she found the witnesses, and took and cast them before the feet of the judges, and said, The man to whom these pledges belong is he by whom I am with child. Yet though I may be burned, I do not make him manifest. Nevertheless, the Lord of the world will cause him in his heart to acknowledge them, and will deliver me from the great judgment. Now, when Yehuda saw them, he recognized them and said in his heart, It is better for me to be ashamed in this world than to passeth away, than to be ashamed in the faces of my righteous fathers in the world to come. It is better that I burn in this world by a fire that is extinguished, than burn in the world to come with fire devouring fire. For measure is set against measure. This is according to that which I said to Jacob, my father, Know now the robe of thy son. So am I now constrained to hear at the place of judgment? Whose are this seal and mantle and staff? And Yehuda acknowledged and said, Tamar is innocent. She is with child by me. And the bath coal fell from heaven and said, From before me was the thing done, and let both be delivered from judgment. And Yehuda said, Because I gave her not to Shelah, my son, hath this happened to me, because he added to not to know her again. Jerusalem. Her veil. Tamar was brought forth to be burned with fire, and she sought the 3 witnesses, but found them not. She lifted up her eyes on high and said, For mercy I pray before the Lord. Thou art he, O Lord God, who answereth the afflicted in the hour of their affliction. Answer me in this hour of my affliction, and I will dedicate to thee 3 saints in the valley of Dura, Hanava, Mishael, and Azariah. In that hour the word of the Lord heard the voice of her supplication, and said to Michael, Descend, and let her eyes have light. When she saw them, she took them, and cast them before the feet of the judges, saying, By the man to whom these belong, I am with child. But though I may be burned, I declare him not, but confide in the ruler of all the world, the Lord who is witness between me and him, that he will give to the heart of the man to whom these belong, to acknowledge whose are these, his ring, his mantle, and staff. And Yehuda recognized the 3 witnesses, and arose upon his feet, and said, I pray you, my brethren, and ye men of the house of my fathers, to hear me. With the measure that a man measures shall it be measured to him, whether good measure or evil. And blessed is every man who confesses the works, because I took the coat of Joseph, my brother, and dipped it into the blood of a goat, and brought it before the feet of my father, and said to him, Know now whether this be my son's coat or not. The measure is according to the measure, and the rule to the rule. Better it is for me blush in this world than to blush in the world to come. Better to burn with a fire that goes out than to burn in the fire devouring fire. Let Tamar, my daughter-in-law, be spared. She hath not conceived a child by fornication, but because I did not give to her Shelah my son. The Bath-kol came forth from heaven and said, Both of you are acquitted in the judgment, and the thing was from the Lord, and he added not to know her. But it was in the time of her giving birth that, behold, twins were in her womb, and it was in being born that the child stretched forth his hand, and the midwife took it and bound it with a scarlet thread, saying, This came the first, and after the child had withdrawn his hand, behold, his brother came forth. And she said, With what great power hast thou prevailed? And for thee will it be to prevail, for thou wilt possess the kingdom. And she called his name Pharez. And afterward came forth his brother, upon whose hand was bound the scarlet thread. And she called his name Sarak.
A lot of interesting stuff there. While you were reading, I looked up the Bath-kol thing. I was like, what is Bath-kol? And on Bible Gateway, it says the Bath-kol, daughter of a voice, sound, call. The term denotes an audible divine voice apart from any visible divine manifestation. So essentially, it's just a disembodied voice from heaven. It appears to be that's what the Bath-kol is. It's distinguished from such phenomena as God speaking to Moses, where there was a divine manifestation in the earthquake, and from God speaking to the prophets, which was usually apart from an audible voice by the Holy Spirit resting upon them. It was noted for its remarkable quality of tone, and sometimes likened to whispering or chirping. It proclaimed God's will or judgment to individual groups, rulers, localities, and whole nations. Examples of the Bath-kol can be found in Daniel 4:31. A voice fell from heaven, and looks like they got a bunch of other footnotes there, but mostly it seems to show up in the Targums, I guess. But although it does reference the same thing as being at Jesus' baptism from heaven was heard a voice, Matthew 3:17, Mark 1:11, Luke 3:22. Jesus' transfiguration, when I guess when Moses and Elijah were there with him, Matthew 17:5, Mark 9:7, Luke 9:35. Just before Christ entered into his passion, a voice was heard from heaven saying, I have glorified thy name and will glorify it again, John 12:28. when Paul was stricken on the road to Damascus, he heard a voice from heaven, Acts 9:4, 22:7, chapter 9, chapter 26:14. Peter's vision at Joppa when the unclean animals rise, Peter, kill and eat, Acts 10:13, Acts 15, and there's other non-biblical references as well. So I guess bath coal is just simply whenever they heard a voice from heaven.
Mm-hmm. And that was whenever there was confirmation as to something incredible happening. And with regard to the particular story, I'll have to pull up the manuscript when we go up over the break. But what had happened is, because Tamar was the daughter of Shem, and she was a prophetess, and being found with child, they were going to burn her, and that would be the proper judgment. And she knew that Judah was the father, but she was not going to convict him in front of his fathers, but she was going to allow the pledges that she brought forth, which were the staff, the mantle, and the ring, to be witness, and then he could decide for himself. And so that is when, he did bring forth and say that he was responsible for having lain with her, and that it was not her fault. And that also, when you look in the fullness of the story, it was the Holy Spirit that had instructed her to go lay by the wayside in Timnah and to receive seed from him, and that this would also preserve through Judah the line and the kingship of Messiah going forth through Phares and Sarah. And so, and which she had also received prophecy before that this would occur. All right, we'll be right back, everyone.
From the dawn of man, we have turned to nature to help attain balance within ourselves. But somewhere, we lost our way. Western culture is once again remembering the healing benefits of CBD, the non-psychoactive component of the hemp plant. That's why more and more people who use CBD report relief from inflammation and chronic pain, balanced blood sugar and cardiovascular system, relief from muscle tensions, tremors, migraines, headaches, anxiety, depression, and the list goes on. The big question is, where do you get it? iLife is a 99% pure CBD oil made with all organic ingredients, and it's available to TFR listeners worldwide. If you use coupon code TFR at checkout, you'll get $5 towards your order. Head on over to iLife.com now. That's AYA life.com.
Do you want to lose weight but have no idea where to begin? The Fast Start Diet, a 3-day weight loss plan, is the answer. 3 days of nutritionally balanced, calorie-restricted meals delivered right to your door. No shopping, no measuring, and no cooking. Everything is prepared for you and ready to eat at home or on the go. The Fast Start Diet has all the amazing benefits of intermittent fasting without starving. We've helped thousands of people who have struggled to reach their weight loss goals. Isn't it time we helped you? With the Fast Start Diet, you'll lose weight and feel great.
Find us on Amazon or go to faststartdiet.com and use promo code POWER to get $10 off your first box. As a special bonus, we will include our #1 rated Lipo3 appetite suppressant spray free with your order. Whatever your diet plans are, start with us at faststartdiet.com and use promo code POWER.
True initiation is an inward journey. It's a spiritual path that is totally inward. It has nothing to do with anything external to you.
I want to determine if the Grand Architect is indeed what I believe it to be, which is the artificial intelligence.
The initiatory path is one of self-discovery and self-revealing. It's not a journey that someone can hold your hand through.
Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I want to take you through the steps of initiation. Remember, you are divinity.
Step Beyond the Veil with Chris and Sherry Gio. Fridays and Saturdays, 7 p.m. to 10 p.m.
We are TFR.
My faith in destiny is all I need to prevail.
Truth Frequency Radio.
And in those days, there were giants in the land, and the sons of the angels of God looked upon the daughters of men and found them fair, and took of them wives, and their sons became of old great men of renown. So they have been mixing with us on a genetic level since the time of Enoch and Ezekiel's will.
Here on Earth, we're intrigued by the sun, moon, and stars, and imagine there's got to be planets like ours. So conceive of a face on the surface of Mars, so in need of a meaning and purpose we lost. And indeed they believe that these might be our gods, or that maybe with time we'll do right and evolve, and eventually reach what they seek, and then solve all the problems of man. But they really don't know that they fall, and the works of our hands are but just filthy rags. So we travel the lands to dig up our past time, our lapses, and limit our much of the facts. And imagine that God's came in and
All right, welcome back, everybody. I did pull up the chapter that I had written about this to just bring forth a little bit more information, because the Rod of Wonder and the Vestures of Power are also initiation items which were passed down through the patriarchs and were very important in what is the Melchizedek priesthood, the Church of the Firstborn, the Order of the Ancients, which are concepts that are spoken about in a lot of material, but which are not well known about, even though they are alluded to in a lot of different individual accounts. And we did put together a book called the Book on the Order of the Ancients, which has the Order of the Ancients written by Elijah the Thespit, together with the writings of Abraham, and a manuscript called the Kitab al-Magali, which is a manuscript of Adam and his initiation into the Melchizedek priesthood before his fall from paradise, and that he had been initiated into the Church of Eden and instructed and taught there the rites of the priesthood and the priestly initiation and how to conduct, and also to pass on those initiation to future generations. And we see this also spoken about in great detail in the writings of Abraham, that Abraham was also instructed by Shem, who was the Melchizedek according to his time, that was a title that he held, and that his father had raised him in this knowledge, and that Abraham was also passed on this information, as was his children, all throughout the time that that Shem was alive before passing on. And that these particular items, the Rod of Wonder, the Staff of God, which we see incorporated into the miracles of Sinai, and also the liberation of the Israelites from Egypt and from Pharaoh. That it was here taken back from Judah, who, because he had willingly given them to Tamar, and as a payment for what he thought were the services of a harlot. And so his father, in seeing and being witness to what occurred with his confessing that he dipped the kid's goat, his brother's coat of many colors, which is the garments of power, in my opinion, and that he did so in order to try to deceive his father into believing that that Joseph had died by being consumed by wild animals. And so, in my opinion, this is also connected to Revelation 19:13, where we see that Yeshua at the end of days, that he also returns for the end times, and that he is wearing this vesture dipped in blood, and wielding this rod of iron, that these items find full circle and return with him at the end of days for the harvest. And that just as they were given to Adam, and in which I cover in great detail in this book, the vestures of light and the rod of wonder, this this story on Tamar is just one of the many chapters. This book is like 300 plus pages and shares many fascinating quotes about the passing on of these items, how they were taken. Esau took them back from Nimrod, and then here where Judah has them removed from him, and that afterwards Jacob gives them to Joseph. And then when Joseph passes on, and the Egyptians raid all of his household and take everything and just put it into the royal court and into their reservoirs, these items were found and left and held in the royal treasury. And it wasn't until Ruel leaving, because of the opinion that Jannes and Jambres had given to Pharaoh, that he should bathe in the blood of Hebrew children in order to receive healing from his boils. And when when this remedy was given off, Ruel decided to leave and not be connected to that treatment. And in heading eastward, he took with him the rod of wonder as well as the garments of power. And we see that in the book of the Assatir, and also in the Perkdi Rabbi Eleazar, that Moshe receives them when he goes eastward 40 years later, following Ruel, who's, mostly everybody knows him as Jethro, but that he was the father-in-law of Moshe, and that Moshe married Zipporah, and that was his eldest daughter. And it's intriguing that Moshe met Zipporah at the same well that Jacob met Rebekah, and also that Isaac, sometimes I get that all confused, but that Isaac had met Rebekah, and also that Jacob met Rachel, and Moshe met Zipporah and was married to her, and that he received these items, and that one of the one of the items that he was given by the Most High was the staff of God, the rod of wonder, and that it was fastened into the ground in Jethro's backyard, and Moshe was able to remove it, and that it would turn into a basilisk at his command, that God had showed him how to utilize it to take on the shape of a shapeshifter, a serpent, and that this was one of the supernatural signs that he would be able to utilize in order to convince Pharaoh to release his people from bondage. And we also know that it was this rod that that split the Reed Sea, and that provided safe course passage across to the other side, and that Pharaoh's army was drowned in traveling after and trying to catch up with Moshe and his people. So that's just part of, some of the stories that are part of this whole tale of the rod of wonder. But it goes back again to this particular account, and it being given first to Judah, but because he had passed it on as a harlot's payment, it was taken back by his father and then given to Joseph, and Joseph was initiated, and it was under Joseph that both of these items were reunited, and that Moshe also, it was both of these items were given to him as well, and that they were used in his story as far as breaking free the Israelites and helping to liberate. And there's so much information about that as well in the Rod of Wonder book. But I can read here. When the sons of Jacob saw how inconsolable their father was, they went to Judah and said to him, "This great misfortune is thy fault." Judah replied, "It was I that asked you, what profit is if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? And now you say the sin lies at my door." The brethren continued to argue, "But it was not thou that didst this. Come and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites." And we followed the advice. Hadst thou said, "Let us restore him to his father," we had heeded these words of thine as well. The brethren thereupon deprived Judah of his dignity, for hitherto he had been their king, and they also excluded him from their fellowship, and he had to seek his fortune alone. Through the mediation of his chief shepherd, Hira, he became acquainted with the Canaanitish king of Adullam, Bozran by name, and though he was well aware of the corruption of the generations of Canaan, he permitted passion to get the better of him and took a Canaanite for wife. And so when he took a Canaanite for wife, and what a lot of people don't know is that this woman hated Tamar and did not want her children to marry a Shemite. And that was another reason why she instructed her children to not spill, not to put seed into her. Yeah, but to spill it on the side. And because of that, that was, the curse that took the lives of the two eldest sons.
So is the Canaanite, their mother, Jacob's wife, the Canaanite, it was saying basically the antithesis of what Yahuwah was always telling Abraham's children: don't marry a Canaanite, don't have children by the Canaanite. They appeared to have the same attitude: don't get with a Hebrew, don't have children with a Hebrew. Is that the general idea there?
Yes.
And that's the reason why the sons of Jacob did what they did?
Right. Yeah, and it was, because their mother had instructed them, and that she was going to find and give them daughters, to marry from the Canaanitish women. I'll read just a little bit more.
And you're reading from your book, The Rod of Wonder?
Yes. Okay. Even Esau came in time to acknowledge that the daughters of Canaan were wicked, and the lion Judah must needs to take one of them to wife. The Holy Spirit cried out against Judah when he married the Canaanite woman of Adullam, saying, "The glory of Israel went down in Adullam." The firstborn son of Judah from his marriage was named the childless, a suitable name for him that died without begetting any issue. At Judah's desire, married Tamar, a daughter of Aram, the son of Shem. But because she was not a Canaanitish woman, his mother used artifices against her, and he did not know her. And an angel of the Lord killed him on the third day after his wedding. Then Judah gave Tamar to his second son Onan, the marriage taking place before the week of the wedding festivities. For ere had elapsed a whole year, Onan lived with Tamar without knowing her, and when finally Judah uttered threats against him on the account, he did indeed have intercourse with her. But giving heed to the injunctions of his mother, he took care not to beget any children with her. He too died on account of his iniquity, and his name Onan, mourning, was well chosen, for very soon was his father called upon to mourn for him. And now Judah conceived the plan of marrying Tamar to his youngest son, Shelah, but his wife would not permit it. She hated Tamar because she was not of the daughters of Canaan, like herself. And while Judah was away from home, Bathsheba chose a wife for her son Shelah from the daughters of Canaan. And Judah was very angry at Bathsheba for what she had done. And also God poured out his wrath upon her, for on account of her wickedness she had to die, and her death happened a year after that of her two sons. Now that Bathsheba was dead, Judah might have carried out his wish and married Tamar to his youngest son, but he waited for Shelah to grow up, because he feared for his life, seeing that Tamar had brought death to two husbands before him. So she remained a widow in her father's house for 2 years. Endowed with the gift of prophecy, Tamar knew that she was appointed to be the ancestress of David and the Messiah, and she determined to venture upon an extreme measure in order to make sure of fulfilling her destiny. Accordingly, when the Holy Spirit revealed to her that Judah was going up to Timnah, she put off from her the garments of her widowhood and sat in the gate of Abraham's tent. And there she encountered Judah. All the time she lived in the house of her father-in-law, he had never seen her face, for in her virtue and chastity she had always kept it covered. And now, when Judah met her, he did not recognize her. It was as a reward for her modesty that God made her to become the mother of the royal line of David and the ancestress of Isaiah and his father Amos, as well as both of whom were prophets and of royal blood. Judah passed Tamar by without paying any attention to her, and she raised her eyes heavenward and said, "O Lord of the world, shall I go forth empty from the house of this pious man?" Then God sent the angel that is appointed over the passion of love, and he compelled Judah to turn back. And with prophetic caution, Tamar demanded that as a pledge for the reward he promised her, he leave with her his signet, his mantle, and his staff, the symbols of royalty, judgeship, and messiahship, the three distinctions of the descendants of Tamar from her union with Judah. When Judah sent her the promised reward, a kid of the goats by the hand of his friend, in order to receive the pledges from her hand, Tamar could not be found, and he feared to make further search for her, lest he put to shame. But Tamar, who soon discerned that she was with child, felt very happy and proud, for she knew that she would be the mother of kings and redeemers. And when her state became known, she was forcibly dragged before the court, in which Isaac, Jacob, and Judah sat as judges. Judah, being the youngest of the judges and the least considerable in dignity, was the first to give a decision. For thus it is prescribed in criminal cases, that the prominent judges overawe not the lesser, and influence their decisions unduly. It was the opinion of Judah that the woman was liable to the penalty of death by burning, for she was the daughter of the high priest Shem, and death by fire is the punishment ordained by the law for a high priest, daughter that leads an unchaste life. The preparations for her execution were begun. In vain Tamar searched for the 3 pledges she had received from Judah. She could not find them, and almost she lost hope, for she would be able to wring a confession from her father-in-law. She raised her eyes to God and prayed, I supplicate thy grace, O God, thou who givest ear to the cry of the distressed in the hour of his need. Answer me that I may be spared to bring forth the 3 holy children who will be ready to suffer death by fire for the sake of the glory of thy name. And God granted her petition and sent the angel Michael down to succor her. He put the pledges in a place in which Tamar could not fail to see them. And she took them, threw them before the feet of the judges with the words, by the man whose these are, am I with child. But thou, I perish in the flames. I will not betray him. I hope in the Lord of the world, that he will turn the heart of the man, so that he will make confession thereof. Then Judah rose up and said, with your permission, my brethren, and ye men of my father's house, I will make it known that with what measure a man meets, it shall be measured unto him, be it for good or for evil. But happy the man that acknowledges his sins, because I took the coat of Joseph and colored it with the blood of a kid, and then laid it at the feet of my father, saying, know not whether it be thy son's coat or not. Therefore must I now confess before the court, unto whom belongeth this signet, the mantle and the staff. But it is better that I be put to shame in this world than I should be put to shame in the other world, before the face of my pious father. It is better that I should perish in a fire that can be extinguished than I should be cast into hellfire, which devoureth other fires. Now, then, I acknowledge that Tamar is innocent. By me is she with child, not because she indulged in illicit passion, but because I held her back, her marriage with my son Shelah. Then a heavenly voice was heard to say, ye are both innocent. It was the will of God that it should happen. The open confession of Judah induced his oldest brother, Reuben, to also make public acknowledgement of the sin. He must needs take one of them to wife. The Holy Spirit cried out against Judah when he married the Canaanite woman out against of Adullam, saying, the glory of Israel went down in Adullam. Okay, I don't know, something just happened where it went back to something, but I'm going to just stop there. Covered most of what I wanted to say anyways. And so anyways, Tamar and her reputation was restored, and she was honored as a prophetess, and that what had happened was led by the Holy Spirit, and that in fact it would be through her that the children of prophecy would be born, and that the children of the Davidic line and leading to Messiah, the stem of Jesse, that it would be through her two sons, Phares and Zerah.
Yeah, it's interesting though in the Targum version. The stuff that you were reading from your book, were you quoting from the Targum or the Targum and other resources to build your narrative there, or what?
Yeah, I've covered from not just the Targum, but yeah, there's a number of different passages.
Is that all?
The Legends of the Jews. Yeah, it's all sourced.
And footnoted.
Yeah, and it's all footnoted and broken down into different, as far as how it builds the story and builds the case. And so all of it is linked in that similar manner to the actual book. So
yeah, obviously in the Targum version there was a whole lot more added to the narrative than what we read simply in the English version of Genesis.
Right.
And somebody made comment in there that Mike Heiser has been saying that the Targums are not to be considered scripture, but rather commentary akin to like a John MacArthur study Bible kind of thing, where you have the text but you have added insight. And I don't know how he can make that a definitive statement. It's kind of like when King James only types are always saying, well, look at all these other translations, they subtract this from the text. And I'm like, yeah, you might want to go look into and see where the King James added into the text before you make the accusation that the other ones take away from the text. Because there's two ways that you could look at the differences, right?
Yes.
So I'm torn on the matter, because I think there's a lot of very strong arguments for the current version of the Torah that we have when it comes to things like the Torah codes and the mathematical codes that can be found in the equal letter spacing and all that stuff. I mean, there's quite a lot of extensive research that has been done on that by a number of people. We're going to break.
Yep. All right, we'll be right back for a second hour.
Hi, my name is Ella, and I'm 10 years old. I'm one of the millions of children born to parents suffering from the Sheeple virus. Symptoms include the inability to think for oneself, the attention span of a goldfish, and a strong belief in government and the mainstream media. It is estimated that 1 out of every 2 children are being raised by parents infected with the Sheeple virus. But there is a cure. For as little as 19 cents per day, you can become a TFR supporter and help children like me get their daily dose of truth. Together, we will make sure every child has protection from deception.
The creation of a commission. I'm Lisa Lacera, Fox News. A late-night session in the Senate as lawmakers battle over the forming of a panel that would investigate the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol.
A national, bipartisan, independent commission to report on the events of January 6th is exactly what the doctor ordered.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, but Republican Leader Mitch McConnell says there's no need.
Multiple Senate committees are conducting their own bipartisan inquiries. And obviously the role of the former president has already been litigated exhaustively.
Just 3 Senate Republicans have said they will vote in favor of the proposal, which passed in the House with support of all Democrats and a handful of Republicans. President Biden in Ohio today talking up his infrastructure plan.
President Biden spoke at Cuyahoga Community College in Cleveland, where he shared how much America has slipped in how some assessments see the U.S.
The 13th best infrastructure in the world. Come on.
The president says he wants to raise corporate taxes to bring billions to rebuild.
That could put hundreds of thousands of people to work to modernize our roads, our bridges, our ports, our airports, and pay for it.
Republicans criticize Biden's plans for going beyond traditional infrastructure.
Fox's Colonel Scott. 2 people have died. 10 are missing after a boat capsized this afternoon off the Florida Keys.
The Coast Guard tells us there are 8 survivors. They were rescued by the cutter Resolute. It's not clear where that vessel was headed or where it had been coming from. At this point, the boat itself has not been located, but the search continues right now.
Craig Stevens from Fox Station WSVN in Miami. A Japanese cabinet minister says they're looking into extending the COVID state of emergency in Tokyo to June 20th. That's just over a month before the opening ceremonies of the Summer Olympics. America is listening to Fox News.
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
The wicked ones obviously under heavy Masonic influence. All right, welcome back, everybody, for a second hour. You know, in all of the parallel accounts that we've been doing now, and reading and sharing and bringing forth insight from different stories, you know, I just ask people to consider just reading and looking at the Targums with an open mind, even if it's just, you know, the book of Genesis. Just consider it, read it, and then see if it moves you or if it gives you insight in a manner that you're not finding anywhere else. And I think, you know, it can be beneficial for one's research and one's consideration, and that as now all of these other like the Jasher and the Jubilees, which a lot of people have embraced and are looking into with open mind, that we've seen that the Targum falls in line with a lot that is shared in the Jasher account and the Jubilees account, and that there's equal confirming witness all throughout those narratives. And that as we read through the King James and then we read through the Targum as well, that we seem to get extra insight and things to consider. And so if it's beneficial for your research and your study, and it blesses you, and I think that, you know, it does when people actually really read it and study it for themselves, especially when it comes to the messianic prophecies, just like with the book of Enoch, you know, the Son of Man and all of that, that we find in the Targum similarity as to the word of the Lord and to the connections of even the angel of the Lord and different to different roles that he played that are found all throughout the lives of the patriarchs, which even makes, you know, the before Abraham was I am come to light in greater detail. And so so I think a lot of people are realizing that with the Genesis narrative that we're doing, the Genesis Revisited series, all that we are, you know, just sharing and going back and forth and sharing this banter, that many people are being blessed by these teachings and these informations and this possibility. And I know a lot of people, like with you doing the virtual house church, a lot of people have contacted me and told me about how they are now integrating the Targum into their, looking back at the whatever Torah portion they're going to be reading from and incorporating all that into their study, and how much of a great blessing that has been for them as well. And so a lot of people are being blessed.
Yeah, that's before we went to the break. That would have been pretty much the conclusion of my thought that I was expressing there right before we went to break. Is that I can accept the current version of the Torah translated into English as we understand it, primarily because of things like the Torah codes that just seem. I mean, when you, I know how much you or our audience has really looked into that, and I haven't looked into it extensively, but I've looked into it enough to know that that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
And
without a doubt, yeah.
That for the equal letter spacing to be the way it is in all 5 books, spelling from I forget it's like every 7th letter or something. I forget what the letter spacing is, but in Genesis and Exodus. Let's say it's 7. Don't quote me on that, but I think it's 7. But whatever. That from the appearance of the first Tav for Torah, you keep counting like every 7 letters, and it spells Torah, all through Genesis and all through Exodus. And then when you get to Leviticus, I forget what the letter spacing is, but it repeats throughout the entire book of Exodus. It spells the Yod He Vav He, name of God. And then Numbers and Deuteronomy, whatever the letter spacing is, it spells Torah backwards. So it's almost like both are pointing toward the center, which is Yahuwah, there. And I'm like, you can't, and that's why it says you can't add to and you can't subtract from the Torah. Because if you do, I mean, you're going to significantly mess things like this up. So the question I would have is, if you looked at the Aramaic, which is closely akin to Hebrew, there are differences, but my question would be, are you going to add to more of the equal letter spacings or subtract from it, nullifying that whole thing? So that would be my caution. But on the flip side of it, where the accusation would be the Targums are quote unquote dangerous, I would disagree with that for all the reasons that you expressed. Now, let me give a caveat to that, because like the Schofield Reference Bible, that was one of those that growing up Baptist that I was very familiar with, that we had, and there's a whole lot of commentary added in the Schofield Reference Bible that I now totally disagree with. Especially like dispensation theology, pre-trib rapture doctrine, and stuff like that. That's very heavily promoted in commentary Bibles like that. So at best, we could look at the Targums and say, well, these were ancient, Hebrew commentaries, similar to like a Schofield or John MacArthur study Bible, or E.W. Bullinger. He's got a study Bible also. And each of these study Bibles, I mean, I think that they have value, but you have to realize, okay, this commentary is a man's opinion. This is somebody's understanding, their understanding of the scriptures that they're applying in the form of commentary to the text. Now, with that understanding, most of the stuff that we're looking at in English Bible commentaries, going back to perhaps the 17th century, that's 1,700 years removed from the original text. Right. People doing the best they can with their understanding of Scripture, 1,700 years removed from the text, whereas the Aramaic Targums are like right in the middle of the time period that they're writing the text. So, yes, they are a few hundred years removed from, let's say, the writings of Moses, maybe 1,000 or so years from Moses. But, I mean, they're still right in the mix of the time that the Old Testament was being written, as well as the beginning of when the New Testament is being written. So, if we play the whisper down the line game, right, telephone, where you get all these people and one person at one end starts the chain of discussion, and by the time you get to the other end, especially the more people you have involved, the more the story changes. So my contention would be those who are closest to the original source information are going to have the most reliable commentary. So this is the way I approach the Targums, is if we are to assume that all this added text that we read about, like for instance in the Aramaic or the Jerusalem Targums that you read there, that elaborate a whole lot more on what I read in the King James from Genesis 38, then my take on it is like, well, this is what these people understood that text to represent, likely due to oral tradition as well as other written texts such as Joshua. And to your point, so far, at least from what we've been doing in our study together here, is there's a lot of confirming witness in multiple texts. So when we read the Targum and it says that she's a Tamar's of the house of Shem, for instance, which is not in our King James English or from the Masoretic text, and then you read that and it's like, well, what did they know? How did they know that? How did they add that commentary to the text? And we were like, well, it tells you point blank in Joshua that that's what happened, and they clearly had that as another reference to refer to. And so I think the word dangerous is unwarranted. When somebody will say, well, the Targums are dangerous, no, I don't think so. And thus far, I have yet to encounter, and I'm new to all this, really as a result of our you and I doing the study together. You've been studying them a lot longer than I have, but in the time that we've been doing our shows together, that I have become exposed to the Targums, and you're right, we're bringing them out more and more in the Virtual House Church. I have only seen greater confirmation and elaboration and no contradiction so far to what we understand as the canonized text. So, and my take on any extra biblical text, I'm like, if it adds to it in the sense of helping me understand it, giving me a greater understanding and appreciation of what's being said, great. Why not? As a researcher, it's just another piece of the puzzle of the investigation that we're putting together here. But if I come across something that blatantly contradicts Scripture, and this was my take on the early discussions that we had on Genesis 4:1, for instance, about King James. Adam knew his wife, and she conceived and gave birth to Cain, right? So you're like, well, done deal. Well, but what about Genesis 3:15? What's this deal about serpent seed in Genesis 3:15? And then you bring up all the other scriptures that are referenced. So while some things may have been pulled out of the text, there's still a lot of internal witness within the text that still verifies it.
Yes.
So anyway, that's my take on it.
Yeah, and I agree. And I don't want to rehash all of this. We've done this many times, but a lot of people, for whatever reason, they will convict, condemn, without reading, studying, and aren't willing to open themselves to new possibility. And it's unfortunate. For a lot of people, they just won't open themselves to truth. And because of that, they keep themselves locked in a box and won't let anything that challenges anything they have in that box to enter in or to reach the new revelation. And so it's unfortunate, but I think a lot of people following the series and listening to our work and considering what we've been covering and sharing are being blessed and are being touched by the revelations contained by all of the manuscripts that we're piecing together. And so
So in what you were reading, there was a few references there to the Tamar's prayer, and that she would dedicate 3 saints in the valley of Dura. Who are the 3 saints? We know Perez and Zerah were the offspring that she had. But that's 2, Perez and Zerah. So who's the third? And she named him, and it may just be a different language here or something, I don't know. But Hananva, Mishael, and Azariah. So maybe there's a daughter. So I'm wondering if Hananva and Mishael are perhaps another name for Perez and Zerah, and that she had a third Azariah maybe as a daughter? Are you aware of any other?
Yeah.
Like what are the three saints that she said she'd dedicate and what is Dura, the Valley of Dura? Have you looked into that at all?
No, I have not. And I'm not certain of the three. But I do know that Phares and Zerah, those are the two boys. But as far as the rest of the story, better it is for me to blush in this world than to blush in the world to come. Better to burn with a fire. My daughter-in-law be spared. She hath not conceived a child by fornication. Shelah, my son.
I think it was further back when it's when Tamar cries out, and she's praying.
And the Messiah.
And the bath coal thing.
Here's Azariah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, right there. Yeah.
Tamar was brought forth to be burned with fire. She sought the three witnesses, but found them not. Lifted up her eyes on high and said, "For mercy I pray before the Lord, thou art He, O Lord God, who answereth the afflicted in the hour of their affliction. Answer me in this hour of my affliction. I will dedicate to thee three saints in the valley of Dura, Hanananva, Mishael, and Azariah." Yeah, I'm not positive, but it would be interesting to see what those names are connected to.
Yeah.
And if there's more elaboration on who these individuals were and how, because, prophetically this, I'm sure, plays out in some manner that we don't know yet.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the phrase the Valley of Dura also, so I'm just kind of curious as to if you had seen anything else or elaborated on that.
Mm-mm.
All right. Well, I can read from the Joshua account and
sure.
Jubilees here.
Sounds good.
Switch over. So I believe we left off in chapter 42 of Joshua. Boom. Okay, Joshua 42. And they went and sat on the opposite side about the distance of a bow shot, and they sat there to eat bread, and whilst they were eating, they held counsel together that was to be done with him, whether they slay him or bring him back to his father. And they were holding the counsel when they lifted up their eyes. I think I'm not sure if I read this or not already. I know I ended at 40. Well, I'll just keep reading. This is the elaborated version of what happened to Joseph in chapter 37 of Genesis. They were holding counsel when they lifted up their eyes and saw, and behold, there was a company of Ishmaelites coming at a distance by the road of Gilead, going toward Egypt. And Judah said unto them, What gain will it be to us if we slay our brother? Peradventure God will require him from us. This then is the counsel proposed concerning him, which ye shall do unto him. Behold, this company of Ishmaelites going down to Egypt. Now therefore come, let us dispose of him to them, and let not our hand be upon him, and they will lead him along with them, and he will be lost amongst the people of the land, and we will not put him to death with our hands. And the proposal pleased his brethren, and they did according to the word of Judah. And whilst they were discoursing about this matter, and before the company of Ishmaelites had come up to them, 7 trading men of Midian passed by them, and as they passed, they were thirsty, and they lifted up their eyes and saw the pit in which Joseph was immured. And they looked, and behold, every species of bird was upon him. And these Midianites ran to the pit to drink water, for they thought it contained water. And on coming before the pit, they heard the voice of Joseph crying and weeping in the pit. And they looked down into the pit, and they saw, and behold, there was a youth of comely appearance and well favored. And they called unto him and said, Who art thou, and who brought thee hither, and who placed thee in this pit in the wilderness? And they all assisted to raise up Joseph, and they drew him out, and brought him up from the pit, and took him, and went away on their journey, and passed by his brethren. And these said unto them, Why do you do this, to take our servant from us, and go away? Surely we placed this youth in the pit because he rebelled against us, and you come and bring him up, and lead him away? Now then give us back our servant. And the Midianites answered and said unto the sons of Jacob, Is this your servant, or does this man attend you? Peradventure you are all his servants, for he is more comely and well favored than any of you, and why do you all speak falsely unto us? Now therefore we will not listen to your words, nor attend to you, for we found the youth in the pit in the wilderness, and we took him. We will therefore go on. And all the sons of Jacob approached them, and rose up to them, and said to them, Give us back our servant, and why will you all die by the edge of the sword? And the Midianites cried out against them, and they drew their swords, and approached to fight the sons of Jacob. And behold, Simeon rose up from his seat against them, and sprang upon the ground, and drew his sword, and approached the Midianites. And he gave a terrible shout before them, so that his shouting was heard at a distance, and the earth shook at Simeon's shouting. And the Midianites were terrified on account of Simeon and the noise of his shouting, and they fell upon their faces and were excessively alarmed. And Simeon said unto them, Verily I am Simeon. I am Simeon, the son of Jacob, the Hebrew, who have only with my brother destroyed the city of Shechem and the cities of the Amorites. So shall God moreover do unto me, if all your brethren the people of Midian, and also the kings of Canaan, were to come with you. They could not fight against me. Now therefore give us back the youth whom you have taken, lest I give your flesh to the birds of the skies and the beasts of the earth. And the Midianites were more afraid of Simeon, and they approached the sons of Jacob with terror and fright, and with pathetic words, saying, Surely you have said that the young man is your servant, and that he rebelled against you, and therefore you placed him in the pit. What then will you do with the servant who rebels against his master? Now therefore sell him unto us, and we will give you all that you require for him. And the Lord was pleased to do this, in order that the sons of Jacob should not slay their brother. And the Midianites saw that Joseph was of a comely appearance and well favored. They desired him in their hearts, and were urgent to purchase him from his brethren. And the sons of Jacob hearkened to the Midianites, and they sold their brother Joseph to them for 20 pieces of silver. And Reuben their brother was not with them, and the Midianites took Joseph, and continued their journey to Gilead. They were going along the road, and the Midianites repented of what they had done in having purchased the young man. And one said to the other, What is this thing that we have done in taking this youth from the Hebrews, who is of comely appearance and well favored? Perhaps this youth is stolen from the land of the Hebrews. Why then have we done this thing? And if he should be sought for and found in our hands, we shall die through him. Now surely hardy and powerful men have sold him to us, the strength of one of whom you saw this day. Perhaps they stole him from his land with their might and with their powerful arm, and have therefore sold him to us for the small value which we gave unto them. And whilst they were thus discoursing together, they looked, and behold, the company of Ishmaelites, which was coming at first, and which the sons of Jacob saw, was advancing toward the Midianites. And the Midianites said to each other, Come, let us sell this youth to the company of Ishmaelites, who are coming toward us, and we will take him for the little that, and we will take for him the little that we gave for him, and we will be delivered from this evil. And they did so, and they reached the Ishmaelites, and the Midianites sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver, which they had given for him to his brethren. And the Midianites went on their road to Gilead, and the Ishmaelites took Joseph, and they let him ride upon one of their camels, and they were leading him to Egypt. And Joseph heard that the Ishmaelites were proceeding to Egypt, and Joseph lamented and wept at this thing, that he was to be so far removed from the land of Canaan from his father, and he wept bitterly whilst he was riding upon the camel. And one of their men observed him, and made him go down from the camel and walk on foot. And notwithstanding this, Joseph continued to cry and weep, and said, O my father, my father! And one of the Ishmaelites rose up and smote Joseph upon the cheek. And still he continued to weep, and Joseph was fatigued in the road, and was unable to proceed on account of the bitterness of his soul. And they all smote him and afflicted him in the road, and they terrified him in order that he might cease from weeping. And the Lord saw the ambition of Joseph and his trouble, and the Lord brought down upon those men darkness and confusion, and the hand of every one that smote him became withered. And they said to each other, What is this thing that God has done to us in the road? And they knew not that this befell them on account of Joseph. And the men proceeded on the road, and they passed along the road of Ephrath, where Rachel was buried. And Joseph reached his mother's grave. And Joseph hastened and ran to his mother's grave, and fell upon the grave and wept. And Joseph cried aloud from his mother's grave, and he said, "O my mother, oh, who didst give me birth? Awake now, and arise, and see thy son, how he has been sold for a slave, and no one to pity him. O arise, and see thy son. Weep with me on account of my troubles, and see the heart of my brethren. Arise, arouse my mother, arouse, awake from thy sleep for me, and direct thy battles against my brethren. Oh, how have they stripped me of my coat, and sold me already twice for a slave, and separated me from my father, and there is no one to pity me. Arouse, and lay thy cause against them before God, and see whom God will justify in the judgment, and whom he will condemn. Rise, O my mother, rise, awake from thy sleep, and see my father, how his soul is with me this day, and comfort him, and ease his heart." And Joseph continued to speak these words, and Joseph cried aloud and wept bitterly upon his mother's grave. And he ceased speaking, and from bitterness of heart he became still as a stone upon the grave. And Joseph heard a voice speaking to him from beneath the ground, which answereth him with bitterness of heart, and with a voice of weeping and praying in these words, my son Joseph, I have heard the voice of thy weeping, and the voice of thy lamentation. I have seen thy tears, I know thy troubles, my son, and it grieves me for thy sake, and abundant grief is added to my grief. Now therefore, my son Joseph, my son, hope to the Lord, and wait for him, and do not fear, for the Lord is with thee. He will deliver thee from all trouble. Rise, my son, go down unto Egypt with thy masters, and do not fear, for the Lord is with thee, my son. And she continued to speak like unto these words unto Joseph, and she was still. And Joseph heard this, and he wondered greatly at this, and he continued to weep. And after this, one of the Ishmaelites observed him crying and weeping upon the grave, and his anger was kindled against him, and he drove him from there, and he smote him and cursed him. And Joseph said unto the men, May I find grace in your sight to take me back to my father's house, and he will give you abundance of riches. And they answered him, saying, Art thou not a slave? And where is thy father? And if thou hadst a father, thou wouldest not already twice have been sold for a slave for so little value. And their anger was still aroused against him, and they continued to smite him and chastise him. And Joseph wept bitterly. Oh, go to break.
All right, hold on, everyone. We'll be right back for the final
The reviews for Extendivite are amazing. Here are some from Amazon. By Christine, great for heart palpitations. By Anne, before I started using this product, every afternoon my ankles and my hands would be swollen. That doesn't happen anymore. So if that part of their advertising is true, I have to assume that the rest of it is also. Not to mention that when I had my yearly blood test, only a few weeks after beginning to use this product, my cholesterol had dropped over 30 points. I'm going to continue to take it. By Croc, I love this product. It really works. By Brad, works great, thank you. Tell us your story. Get your Extendivite today. To order, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
Your home has needs. It needs a healthy, dry environment all year round. Start by getting rid of the worst air in the basement and crawl space, where the problems begin and make the whole house sick. Introducing the new Smart Wave Ventilation Unit. It has advanced technologies to continuously reduce moisture, mold, and odors, and expel radon, gases, and pollutants. And now, Wave units include carbon monoxide detection to automatically expel air at a high rate and send you an alert. It also has an app so you can remotely monitor the conditions. Wave is a comprehensive, maintenance-free, affordable solution that will transform your entire home. Protect your home and family with what it needs. Give it a new Smart Wave Ventilation Unit. For more information, call 888-717-WAVE. That's 888-717-WAVE. Or go to dryhealthyhome.com. That's dryhealthyhome.com.
Wave Home Solutions for a healthy, comfortable home.
more than a dozen astronauts have officially reported UFOs. Hundreds of hours of UFO footage were filmed by astronauts aboard the space shuttle. Many of these UFOs can only be seen in ultraviolet light. Retired former Apollo astronauts and cosmonauts now tell their stories of their own personal UFO encounters.
The Enigma Channel, intelligent television for planet Earth. EnigmaTV.com.
No hate, no hype, no fear. We are TFR Frequency Radio.
Welcome back, everybody, for a final segment. I'll turn it back over to you, Rob. You can finish off what you were reading from.
Okay. Let me switch back over here. Joshua. And the Lord saw Joseph's affliction, and the Lord smote these men, and chastised them. And the Lord caused darkness to envelop them upon the earth. And the lightning flashed, and the thunder roared, and the earth shook at the voice of the thunder and of the mighty wind, and the men were terrified and knew not where they should go. And the beasts and camels stood still, and they led them, but they would not go. They smote them, and they crouched upon the ground. And the men said to each other, What is this that God has done to us? What are our transgressions, and what are our sins, that this thing has befallen us? And one of them answered and said unto them, Perhaps on account of the sin of afflicting this slave has this thing happened this day to us. Kind of like the deal with Jonah. Now, therefore, implore him strongly to forgive us, and then we shall know on whose account this evil befalleth us. And if God shall have compassion over us, then we shall know that all this cometh to us on account of the sin of inflicting this slave. And the men did so, and they supplicated Joseph, and pressed him to forgive them. And they said, We have sinned to the Lord and to thee. Now therefore vouchsafe to request of thy God, that he shall put away this death from among us, for we have sinned to him. And Joseph did according to their words, and the Lord hearkened to Joseph, and the Lord put away the plague which had inflicted upon those men on account of Joseph. And the beasts rose up from the ground, and they conducted them. And they went on, and the raging storm abated, and the earth became tranquilized, and the men proceeded on their journey to go down to Egypt. And the men knew that this evil had befallen them on account of Joseph. And they said to each other, Behold, we know that it was on account of his affliction that this evil befell us. Now therefore, why shall we bring this death upon our souls? Let us hold counsel what to do to this slave. And they answered and said, Surely he told us to bring him back to his father. Now therefore, come, let us take him back, and we will go to the place that he will tell us, and take from his family the price that we gave for him, and we will then go away. And one answered and said, Behold, this counsel is very good, but we cannot do so, for the way is very far from us, and we cannot go out of our road. And one more answered and said unto them, This is the counsel to be adopted. We will not swerve from it, Behold, we are this day going to Egypt, and when we shall have come to Egypt, we will sell him there at a high price, and we will be delivered from this evil. And this thing pleased the men, and they did so, and they continued their journey to Egypt with Joseph. Chapter 43. And when the sons of Jacob had sold their brother Joseph to the Midianites, their hearts were smitten on account of him, and they repented of their acts, and they sought for him to bring him back, but did not find him. And Reuben returned to the pit in which Joseph had been put, in order to lift him out and restore him to his father. And Reuben stood by the pit, and he heard not a word, and he called out to Joseph, Joseph! And no one answered or uttered a word. And Reuben said, Joseph has died through fright, or some serpent has caused his death. And Reuben descended into the pit, and he searched for Joseph, and could not find him in the pit. And he came out again. That's interesting. How come he could climb out, and Joseph couldn't climb out? I was thinking about that earlier. And Reuben tore his garments, and said, the child is not there, and how shall I reconcile my father about him if he be dead? And he went to his brethren, and found them grieving on account of Joseph, and counseling together how to reconcile their father about him. And Reuben said unto his brethren, I came to the pit, and behold, Joseph was not there. What then shall we say unto our father? For my father will only seek the lad from me. And his brethren answered him, saying, Thus and thus we did, and our hearts afterwards smote us on account of this act, and we now sit to seek a pretext how we shall reconcile our father to it. And Reuben said unto them, What is this you have done, to bring down the gray hairs of our father in sorrow to the grave? The thing is not good that you have done. And Reuben sat with them, and they all rose up and swore to each other not to tell this thing unto Jacob. And they all said, The man who will tell this to our father or his household, or who will report this to any of the children of the land, we will all rise up against him and slay him with the sword. And the sons of Jacob feared each other in this matter, from the youngest to the oldest, and no one spoke a word, and they concealed the thing in their hearts. And they afterwards sat down to determine and invent something to say unto their father Jacob concerning all these things. And Issachar said unto them, Here is an advice for you, if it seem good in your eyes to do this thing. Take the coat which belongeth to Joseph, and tear it, and kill a kid of the goats, and dip it in its blood, and send it to our father, and when he seeth it, he will say, An evil beast has devoured him. Therefore tear ye this coat, and behold, his blood will be upon his coat, and by your doing this we shall be free of our father's murmurings. And Issachar's advice pleased them, and they hearkened unto him, and they did according to the word of Issachar, which he had counseled them. And they hastened and took Joseph's coat, and tore it, and they killed a kid of the goats, and dipped the coat in the blood of the kid, and then trampled it in the dust. And they sent the coat to their father Jacob by the hand of Naphtali, and they commanded him to say these words, We had gathered in the cattle, and had come as far as the road to Shechem, and farther, when we found this coat upon the road in the wilderness, dipped in blood and in dust. Now therefore know whether it be thy son's coat or not. And Naphtali went, and he came unto his father, and he gave him the coat, and he spoke unto him all the words which his brethren had commanded him. And Jacob saw Joseph's coat, and knew it, and he fell upon his face to the ground, and became as still as stone. And he afterward rose up and cried out with a loud and weeping voice, and said, It is the coat of my son Joseph. And Jacob hastened and sent one of his servants to his sons, who went to them and found them coming along the road with the flock. And the sons of Jacob came to their father about evening, and behold, their garments were torn, and dust was upon their heads. And they found their father crying out and weeping with a loud voice. And Jacob said to his sons, Tell me truly, what evil have you this day suddenly brought upon me? And they answered their father Jacob, saying, We were coming along this day after the flock had been gathered in, and we came as far as the city of Shechem by the road in the wilderness, and we found his coat filled with blood upon the ground, and we knew it, and we sent unto thee if thou couldst know it. And Jacob heard the words of his sons, and he cried out with a loud voice, and he said, It is the coat of my son, an evil beast has devoured him. Joseph is rent in pieces, for I sent him this day to see whether it was well with you, and well with the flocks, and to bring me word again from you. And he went as I commanded him, and this has happened to him this day, whilst I thought my son was with you. And the sons of Jacob answered and said, He did not come to us, neither have we seen him from the time of our going out from thee until now. And when Jacob heard their words, he again cried out aloud, and he rose up and tore his garments. And he put sackcloth upon his loins, and he wept bitterly, and he mourned, and lifted up his voice in weeping, and exclaimed, and said these words, Joseph, my son, O my son Joseph, I sent thee this day after the welfare of my brethren, and behold, thou hast been torn in pieces. Through my hand has this happened to my son. It grieves me for thee, Joseph, my son. It grieves me for thee. How sweet wast thou to me during life, and now how exceedingly bitter is thy death to me. O that I had died in thy stead, Joseph, my son, for it grieves me sadly for thee, my son. O my son, Joseph, my son, where art thou, and where hast thou been drawn? Arouse, arouse from thy place, and come and see my grief for thee, O my son Joseph. Come now, and number the tears gushing from my eyes down my cheeks, and bring them up before the Lord, that his anger may turn from me. O Joseph, my son, how didst thou fall by the hand of one by whom no one had fallen from the beginning of the world unto this day? For thou hast been put to death by the smiting of an enemy, inflicted with cruelty. But surely I know that this has happened to thee on account of the multitude of my sins. Arouse now, and see how bitter is my trouble for thee, my son. Although I did not rear thee, nor fashion thee, nor give thee breath and soul, but it was God who formed thee, and built thy bones, and covered them with flesh, and breathed in thy nostrils the breath of life, and then he gave thee unto me. Now truly God, who gave thee unto me, he has taken thee from me, and such then has befallen thee. And Jacob continued to speak like unto these words concerning Joseph, and he wept bitterly. He fell to the ground and became still. And all the sons of Jacob, seeing their father's trouble, they repented of what they had done, and they also wept bitterly. And Judah rose up and lifted his father's head from the ground, and he placed it upon his lap, and he wiped his father's tears from his cheeks. And Judah wept an exceeding great weeping, whilst his father's head was reclining upon his lap, still as a stone. And the sons of Jacob saw their father's trouble, and they lifted up their voices and continued to weep, and Jacob was yet lying upon the ground, still as a stone. And all his sons and his servants' children rose up and stood around him to comfort him, and he refused to be comforted. And the whole household of Jacob rose up and mourned in great mourning on account of Joseph and their father's trouble. And the intelligence reached Isaac, the son of Abraham, the father of Jacob, and he wept bitterly on account of Joseph, he and all his household. And he went from the place where he dwelt in Hebron, and his men with him, and he comforted Jacob his son, and he refused to be comforted. And after this Jacob rose up from the ground, and his tears were running down his cheeks, and he said unto his sons, Rise up and take your swords and your bows, and go forth into the field, and seek whether you can find my son's body, and bring it unto me, that I may bury it. Seek also, I pray you, amongst the beasts, and hunt them, and that which shall come to the first before you, seize and bring it unto me. Perhaps the Lord will this day pity my affliction, and prepare before you that which did tear my son in pieces, and bring it unto me, and I will avenge the cause of my son. And his sons did as their father had commanded them, and they rose up early in the morning, and each took his sword and his bow in his hand, and they went forth into the field to hunt the beasts. And Jacob was still crying aloud and weeping, and walking to and fro in the house, and smiting his hands together, saying, Joseph, my son, Joseph, my son. And the sons of Jacob went into the wilderness to seize the beasts, and behold, a wolf came toward them, and he seized him, and brought him unto their father. And they said unto him, This is the first we have found, and we have brought him unto thee as thou didst command us, and thy son's body we could not find. And Jacob took the beast from the hands of his sons, and he cried out with a loud and weeping voice, holding the beast in his hand. And he spoke with a bitter heart unto the beast, Why didst thou devour my son Joseph? And how didst thou have no fear of the God of the earth, or of my trouble for my son Joseph? And thou didst devour my son for naught, because he committed no violence, and didst thereby render me culpable on this account. Therefore God will require him that is persecuted. And the Lord opened the mouth of the beast in order to comfort Jacob with its words. And it answered Jacob and spoke these words unto him. As God liveth who created us in the earth, and as thy soul liveth, my lord, I did not see thy son, neither did I tear him to pieces, but from a distant land, I also came to seek my son, who went from me this day, and I know not whither he be living or dead. And I came this day into the field to seek my son, and your sons found me, and seized me, and increased my grief, and have this day brought me before thee, and I have now spoken all my words to thee. And now therefore, O Son of Man, I am in thy hands, and do unto me this day as it may seem good in thy sight. But by the life of God who created me, I did not see thy son, nor did I tear him to pieces. Neither has the flesh of man entered my mouth all the days of my life. And when Jacob heard the words of the beast, he was greatly astonished, and he sent forth the beast from his hand, and she went her way. And Jacob was still crying aloud and weeping for Joseph day after day, and he mourned for his son many days. Chapter 44. And the sons of Ishmael, who had bought Joseph from the Midianites, who had bought him from his brethren, went to Egypt with Joseph, and they came upon the borders of Egypt. And when they came near unto Egypt, they met 4 men of the sons of Medan, the son of Abraham, who had gone forth from the land of Egypt on their journey. And the Ishmaelites said unto them, Do you desire to purchase this slave from us? And they said, Deliver him over to us. And they delivered Joseph over to them. And they beheld him, that he was a very comely youth, and they purchased him for 20 shekels. And the Ishmaelites continued their journey to Egypt, and Midianim also returned that day to Egypt. And the Midianim said to each other, Behold, we have heard that Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, seeketh a good servant, who shall stand before him to attend him, and to make him overseer of his house and all belonging to him. Now therefore come, let us sell him to him for what we may desire, if he be able to give unto us that which we shall require for him. And these Midianim went and came to the house of Potiphar, and said unto him, We have heard that thou seekest a good servant to attend thee. Behold, we have a servant that will please thee, if thou canst give us that which we may desire, and we will sell him unto thee. And Potiphar said, Bring him before me, and I will see him, and if he please me, I will give unto you that which you may require for him. And the Midianim went and brought Joseph, and placed him before Potiphar, and he saw him, and he pleased him exceedingly. And Potiphar said unto him, Tell me what you require for this youth. And they said, 400 pieces of silver we desire for him. And Potiphar said, I will give it you if you bring me the record of his sale to you, and will tell me his history, for perhaps he may be stolen, for this youth is neither a slave nor the son of a slave, but I observe him the appearance of a goodly and handsome person. And the Midianim went and brought unto him the Ishmaelites who had sold him to them, and they told him, saying, He is a slave, and we sold him to them. And Potiphar heard the words of the Ishmaelites in his giving the silver unto the Midianim, and the Midianim took the silver and went on their journey, and the Ishmaelites also returned home. And Potiphar took Joseph and brought him to his house, that he might serve him. And Joseph found favor in the sight of Potiphar, and he placed confidence in him, and made him overseer over his house, and all that belonged to him he delivered over into his hand. And the Lord was with Joseph, and he became a prosperous man. And the Lord blessed the house of Potiphar for the sake of Joseph. And Potiphar left all that he had in the hand of Joseph, and Joseph was one that caused things to come in and go out, and everything was regulated by his wish in the house of Potiphar. And Joseph was 18 years old, a youth with beautiful eyes and a comely appearance, and like unto him was not in the whole land of Egypt. And at that time, whilst he was in his master's house, going in and out of the house, and attending his master, Zalica, his master's wife, lifted up her eyes toward Joseph, and she looked at him, and behold, he was a youth comely and well favored. And she coveted his beauty in her heart, and her soul was fixed upon Joseph, and she enticed him day after day. And Zilica persuaded Joseph daily, but Joseph did not lift up his eyes to behold his master's wife. And Zilica said unto him, How goodly are thy appearance and form! Truly I have looked at all the slaves, and have not seen so beautiful a slave as thou art. And Joseph said unto her, Surely he who created me in my mother's womb created all mankind. And she said unto him, How beautiful are thine eyes, with which thou hast dazzled all the inhabitants of Egypt, men and women. And he said unto her, How beautiful they are whilst we are alive, but shouldest thou behold them in the grave, surely thou wouldest move away from them. And she said unto him, How beautiful and pleasing are all thy words. Take now, I pray thee, the harp which is in the house, and play with thy hands, and let us hear thy words. And he said unto her, How beautiful and pleasing are my words when I speak the praise of my God and his glory. And she said unto him, How very beautiful is the hair of thy head. Behold, the golden comb which is in the house. Take it, I pray thee, and curl the hair of thy head. And he said unto her, How long wilt thou speak these words? Cease to utter these words to me, and rise and attend to thy domestic affairs. And she said unto him, There is no one in my house, and there is nothing to attend to but to thy words and to thy wish. Notwithstanding all this, she could not bring Joseph unto her, neither did he place his eye upon her, but directed his eyes below to the ground. And Zilekah desired Joseph in her heart, that he should lie with her. And at the time that Joseph was sitting in the house doing his work, Zilekah came and sat before him. And she enticed him daily with her discourse to lie with her, or ever to look at her, but Joseph would not hearken to her. And she said unto him, If thou wilt not do according to my words, I will chastise thee with the punishment of death, and put an iron yoke upon thee. And Joseph said unto her, Surely God, who created man, looseth the fetters of prisoners, and it is he who will deliver me from thy prison, and from thy judgment. And when she could not prevail over him to persuade him, and her soul being still fixed upon him, her desire threw her into a grievous sickness. And all the women of Egypt came to visit her, and they said unto her, Why art thou in this declining state, thou that lackest nothing? Surely thy husband is a great and esteemed prince in all the sight of the king. Shouldest thou lack anything of what thy heart desireth? And Zilekah answered them, saying, This day it shall be made known to you whence this disorder springs in which you see me. And she commanded her maidservants to prepare food for all the women, and she made a banquet for them, and all the women ate in the house of Zilekah. And she gave them knives to peel the citrons to eat them, and she commanded that they should dress Joseph in costly garments, and that he should appear before them. And Joseph came before their eyes, and all the women looked on Joseph, and could not take their eyes from off him. And they all cut their hands with their knives, and they had in their hands, and all the citrons that were in their hands were filled with blood. And they knew not what they had done, but they continued to look at the beauty of Joseph, and did not turn their eyelids from him. And Zilekah saw what they had done, and she said unto them, What is this work that you have done? Behold, I gave you citrons to eat, and you have all cut your hands. And all the women saw their hands, and behold, they were full of blood, and their blood flowed down upon their garments. And they said unto her, This slave in your house has overcome us, and we could not turn our eyelids from him on account of his beauty. And she said unto them, Surely this happened to you in the moment that you looked at him, and you could not contain yourselves from him. How then can I refrain when he is constantly in my house, and I see him day after day going in and out of my house? How then can I keep from declining, or even from perishing on account of this? And they said unto her, The words are true, for who can see this beautiful form in the house and refrain from him? And is he not thy slave and attendant in thy house? And why dost thou not tell him that which is in thy heart, and sufferest thy soul to perish through this matter? And she said unto them, I am daily endeavoring to persuade him, and he will not consent to my wishes. And I promised him everything that is good, and yet I could meet with no return from him. I am therefore in a declining state, as you see. And Zilekah became very ill on account of her desire toward Joseph, and she was desperately lovesick on account of him. And all the people of the house of Zilekah and her husband knew nothing of this matter. And Zilekah was ill on account of her love for Joseph. And all the people of her house asked her, saying, Why art thou ill and declining, and lackest nothing? And she said unto them, I know not this thing which is daily increasing upon me. And all the women and her friends came daily to see her, and they spoke with her. And she said unto them, This can only be through the love of Joseph. And they said unto her, Entice him and seize him secretly, perhaps he may hearken to thee, and put off this death from thee. And Zilkah became worse from her love to Joseph, and she continued to decline till she had scarce strength to stand. And on a certain day Joseph was doing his master's work in the house, and Zilkah came secretly and fell suddenly upon him. And Joseph rose up against her, and he was more powerful than she, and he brought her down to the ground. And Zilkah wept on account of the desire of her heart toward him, and she supplicated him with weeping, and her tears flowed down her cheeks. And she spoke unto him in a voice of supplication and bitterness of soul, saying, Hast thou ever heard, seen, or known of so beautiful a woman as I am, or better than myself, who speak daily unto thee, fall into a decline through love for thee? Confer all this honor upon thee, and still thou wilt not hearken to my voice? And if it be through fear of thy master, lest he punish thee, as the king liveth, no harm shall come to thee from thy master through this thing now. Therefore, pray listen to me, and consent for the sake of the honor which I have conferred upon thee, and put off this death from me. And why should I die for thy sake? And she ceased to speak. And Joseph answered her, saying, Refrain from me, and leave this matter to my master. Behold, my master knoweth not what there is with me in the house, for all that belongeth to him he has delivered into my hand. And how shall I do these things in my master's house? For he hath also greatly honored me in this house, and he hath also made me an overseer over his house, and he hath exalted me, and there is no one greater in this house than I am. And my master hath refrained nothing from me, except thee, who art his wife. How then canst thou speak these words unto me, and how can I do this great evil and sin to God and to thy husband? Now therefore refrain from me, and speak no more such words as these, for I will not hearken to thy words. But Zilkah would not hearken to Joseph when he spoke these words unto her, but she daily enticed him to listen to her. And it looks like we're probably going to be at the end of the show here, so I'll stop here. I guess we must have already covered the Joshua account, because this is getting to Genesis 39. So yeah, I've read ahead because, well, that's okay. I mean, I'll finish the Joshua account on my show next week, and then we can read the Genesis account and see where we are in Jubilees.
That's good.
After that. But yeah, this is like Shakespeare here.
Right.
It's like a Romeo and Juliet kind of thing going on here, it sounds like.
And all those women end up cutting themselves.
they're all like, oh, look at him. They're cutting their hands. That's pretty crazy. All right, man.
All right, brother. Good show.
Yeah, see you next week.